In 2020, a Japanese speedrunner named Eru uploaded an 11 minute and 25 second speedrun of Jump King, a game known for being both frustratingly difficult and brutally punishing. The time of the run wasn't all that impressive, after all the world record by that point was well under 5 minutes, but this wasn't any ordinary 11-minute run. Eru had played through the entire game without being able to actually see the game at all. Using a combination of complex audio cues, normalized setups, numbered taps for repositioning, counting to keep track of the wind cycles in Stormwall Pass,
でも風の音は途切れないので、風の音では、不向き、風の切り替わ
and a whole load of full jump setups, Eru cleared the entire map from start to finish in just over 11 minutes. A game that had tormented streamers and players alike for years had been made into a mockery by this unknown player. Now, people had sort of tried this before, but there was almost always someone else on a call with them, telling them where to jump, how long for, where to position themselves, etc. Eru's run, however, was completely solo. He had no assistance from anyone, and at the time, this was kind of unreal. There were a handful of other players that had attempted the feat unassisted, such as Rao, 4, and Blink01, but Eru was the first to find real success. His video went under the radar for the most part, and then, in 2023, I decided I'd try to beat the game blindfolded myself. After many hours of practice, and many adjustments to the route and strategies used by Eru, as well as some new ones I found myself, I eventually managed to get a completion of my own. And after a lot more practice, I lowered my time enough to beat Eru's original 11-minute run with a 9:57. Also around this time, a few other Jump King players took interest in the category and started trying it themselves. To this day, 4 other players have beaten the original Jump King blindfolded without assistance, including Lehvel, Trimp, Heppy, and Sklounced. And the world record currently is a 7:48, which I got a while ago. As most of you probably know, Jump King has 3 main vanilla maps: the original Main Babe, the first DLC map, New Babe Plus, and the final and hardest of the 3, Ghost of the Babe. Ghost of the Babe is the map I'm going to be focusing on in this video, because on the 26th of May 2024, something long considered completely infeasible happened. Jump King's hardest vanilla map was beaten blindfolded, and this video will explain how the run works and how it became possible in the first place. This is how Jump King's hardest map was beaten blindfolded. One of the biggest headaches with doing blindfolded runs is proving that you're actually blindfolded, so I went to some effort to dissuade certain comments. First off, this is me, if you couldn't tell. Kind of important in a blindfolded run to show that you're actually blindfolded. This is displaying my second monitor and my OBS display to show that there's no gameplay on there that I could secretly be using. This camera is for further verification, showing my hands doing the inputs as well as the monitor itself, which I actually turn off halfway through the run as was suggested to me. Most of the route and strategies used in this run were found by myself, but a lot of it was discovered by the speedrunner Lehvel, who is also the second and to this date only other player to have actually beaten this challenge, so a huge shout out to him. I'm going to leave a link to his completion in the description as well. He did it live on Twitch and it was a pretty epic moment. Also thanks to Blink and Trimp for their help also with this category. The first area of Red Crown is simple enough to do blindfolded. You could learn it yourself in probably less than 30 minutes. In fact, if anyone is interested in doing the original map blindfolded, I'll include a full guide in the description of this video. It's really not as hard as you'd think. You don't even have to be a speedrunner to learn it. Anyway, we need to get to the third screen. This is where the portal to Ghost of the Babe is. However, getting into the opening is quite difficult. I tried a few techniques, such as doing a very precise jump from against this block. This would allow you to full jump straight into the portal, however it was annoying and inconsistent to set up. Thankfully, a much easier way to do this does exist and was shown to me by Lehvel. You just get up to this platform, higher above in Red Crown, like you would in a normal Main Babe run, and walk off. This lands you perfectly to full jump into the portal. It's slower, but just finishing this run at all is hard enough, so I'm never actually too concerned about the time. This little transitionary screen between Red Crown and the next area is easy enough to do blindfolded since you can't actually fall. And now we're on to Philosopher's Forest. I knew straight away this area would be no problem at all to do blindfolded, as it's one of the easiest in the entire game. It's filled with full jumps and consistent strategies. I start by walking left against this block and doing a full right jump. A short, lenient walk left followed by another full right jump. Walking into the wall and doing a tap jump to bonk. From here, a full jump left followed by a full right. Walk left, 2 full lefts, a short hop to the left and a full. Back to walking left, a lenient left jump, a lenient right jump, another bonk setup, full left, full right, a short walk to the left, and right again. Get to the hole, fall down it, and we're already through the first real area of the map. Super easy to memorize and execute. Things aren't going to be easy for long, however, as the very next area is one of the main reasons why this category was considered completely impossible for 5 years. You might have heard of it. The concept of having to do the entire bog, an underwater area where your jumps are half speed compared to normal, combined with the ground locking you in place like the snow in map 1, made this seem out of the question for a blindfolded run. But wait, don't speedruns skip most of this area? Yeah, the bog skip, just do that, right? Well, let me explain how the bog skip actually works. This skip requires both a pixel and subpixel perfect lineup. In Jump King, the subpixels measure your position on a scale even more precisely than the regular pixels that you can actually see. I can demonstrate this easily using the snake ring. I tap right twice, but my character doesn't physically move, yet the subpixel still changes. This means setting up this skip without looking isn't happening. Or at least it wasn't, until the literal best Jump King player of all time, Trimp, who is also a blindfolded main bay victor, found a setup that worked. Using the snake ring, an item found in the game's second map, New Bay Plus, which essentially turns on ice physics when equipped, a combination of jumps was found, by some miracle, that lines up the character perfectly. This is how it works. First you have to walk left against this wall. In Jump King, your subpixel will always be the same, providing you're next to a block. From here, full jump left, full jump right, full jump left, enabling the snake ring in midair before landing, full right, full left again, enabling the snake ring again, and then finally 3 full rights. And just like that, half of the bog has been skipped without even needing to look. Like I mentioned before, the jumping works a little differently underwater. Instead of a full jump consisting of 35 frames, or 0.6 seconds, now everything is doubled, so you're essentially jumping in slow motion. The snow also makes it harder, as you can't move left or right like you normally can. This can be negated thanks to the snake ring, which enables regular walking as the ring overrides the snow effect. The first bog jump is pretty easy, you just jump and slide using the ring, and then full jump right. This next screen is also very easy. You full jump right, equip the snake ring, which allows you to buffer the next 2 full jumps, making it basically an auto. The next screen, however, is one of the hardest in the entire run. Thankfully it's very early on. I found myself constantly getting to the screen and just resetting. The first 2 water jumps aren't too bad to do blindfolded, they both have setups to make them lenient, but this third jump is a nightmare, at least for me. I do a full left to get into a consistent position and then I just pray. I have a 5 frame window from 51 to 56 frames to make it, which would normally be a good margin, but because it's underwater, it's an extremely inconsistent jump in blindfolded. It's also a very punishing jump, as most of the time if you fail it, you'll fall all the way to the start of bog, which is basically a restart. Sometimes you can get saved if you undershoot it, but if you do make it, it's just a few easy full jumps to get to the next area. Aside from the banger music, I never much liked Moulding Manor in regular runs, as it's not so easy to differentiate the platforms from the backgrounds, but that doesn't matter in blindfolded. The first screen is free, it's just a couple falls and a free jump. The next screens will be quite a bit less free, but thanks to some setups found by myself and Lehvel, it's actually one of the more consistent areas in the run, and most of the falls send you to the same place, so the memorization isn't too demanding either. For screen 2, I walk to the right on this stair after landing. Then a full left into a full right. This sets me up to do a short hop to this tiny block. From here I can walk right, full right, to just barely land on the higher step, and then do the same but with a full left to land on the edge of this platform, followed by an easy left jump. The next screen is simple, but it can still be tricky. Just walk right and full left to start. I do a short walk to the right so I don't bug my head, and a medium right jump. It's important to land on the lower of these platforms for the strat to work, otherwise you get this fall, which I showed earlier. Thankfully it's not a huge deal since it's not a big fall. Full left, and then I do a setup here, just to make the landing on the next screen more optimal. I walk down one step, which is easy to do as you can hear the landing sound. I then do a full left, and walk off one more step, and then a full right, followed by a full left. Walk left here for this next setup, full right, and then a nervy right jump, which can send me to the bog if I overshoot it. It's pretty easy though. This screen was a real pain to find a consistent setup for blindfolded, but I eventually settled on this. Walk left first, then I tap right a few times and do neutrals, aka ceiling checks, until I'm no longer hitting my head. From here I need to jump right, and this is where one of the hardest skills to learn for playing this game blindfolded comes into play, especially this map. Hearing the differences between different jump powers. For example, I need to get to this high ledge, but this 24 frame jump and this 26 frame jump sound almost the same. The bigger jump has a slightly longer delay before the landing sound plays due to the increased airtime, and because there's a 2 frame difference, this one is pretty easy to tell after some practice, but they get a lot harder later on. If I get the 24 frame landing, I need to walk right against this bump, tap left, and then full right to get to the higher ledge. If I get a 25 frame jump instead, I do the same thing, but the 25 frame landing actually bonks the ledge, so it's very easy to hear when I get that particular frame. The 2 later frames, 26 and 27, land directly on the higher platform. This is what happened in my run. From the upper ledge, I walk off to the left until I hear the landing. I then do a full right to land on the upper part once more. But this time I know my exact position, and I can do a long walk left followed by a full jump right. There's no risk here of walking too far, as I just fall down to the lower platform and I can try again. But if I don't walk far enough, I get sent back to screen 1 again, or even the bog if I really mess it up. If you're wondering how I know how far I'm walking, I don't exactly, it's just a feel thing from playing the game for over 1,000 hours, and sometimes I get it wrong.
Wait, how do you recover from this?
You have to remember, hundreds of hours goes into creating runs like this. It's not like I just launch the game and do everything perfect first time of asking. From up here I do a short walk left, then a short hop to the right, hoping not to fall to the bog. Full jump to transition, and then regardless of where I land, I walk off 1 step and do a medium left jump, followed by walking right, as this always puts me in the same position. Full right, and then this next jump is a tough one. There are only 3 frames that work, but as long as I don't overshoot it, I get infinite tries. Shorting it just puts me back to the same position. After I landed, I can full left onto the next screen. This screen is another forgiving one. I walk down to the second step and full right. From here I have to time this medium left jump, but thankfully the only punishment comes if I undershoot it, since overshooting it will just put me back to the previous screen. I walk against the wall and do a full jump to set myself up. This next jump is the hardest of this area. I have to land perfectly on the highest of these tiny platforms, and since I can't hear the difference between landing on the 3rd or 2nd, if I do land on the 2nd, I'm cooked. But since this is the completion attempt, I got it. And I can full left, then full right. After landing on my toenail, as intended, I tap left once to get to this lower platform, and then I do these 2 full jumps. This is because this awkward slide jump is 1 frame easier if you're over to the right like this versus being over to the left. Like most slide jumps, undershooting it has no risk. I walk right slowly to make sure I made the jump, as making it and shorting it sound exactly the same. Then a full jump left, and I hug the wall to prepare Bugstalk. Bugstalk is one of my favourite areas in the run. It has hard jumps and gimmick platforms, but it's really satisfying to actually pull it off blindfolded. All the right side falls send you to one of 2 places. There's this fall which isn't too bad, and this worse one. It's easy to hear the difference because one of them splats and one doesn't. Before entering, I make sure I'm against this wall. I do a full right, followed by 2 tiny left taps, then a full left. This sets me up perfectly on the edge for the next jump. The platforms with oil are slippery, which introduces a new challenge. A somewhat easy medium right, followed by a full. You'll notice I did a left tap before the full. That's to avoid this if I happen to have landed in the furthest spot. A couple left taps onto this lower part, then 1 more tap to give myself the most frames for the next jump, which is the first real ice jump. I have to jump to the platform and hold in the opposite direction for a split second after hearing the landing sound. Because of my experience with Main Bay Blindfolded, which also has an ice area, this first one was no trouble. More full jumps from against this wall. Then from here I just need to land anywhere on this oily platform. A very useful full jump combo exists here to get a consistent position on this upper left platform. From this position the jump to the right is quite hard, but I can make it easier by walking a touch right first. This allows a 29 frame jump to snap the platform instead of bonking. Once I'm up here I need to figure out my position, which is hard to do on icy platforms, or platforms without useful ceilings above you. I full right to get to this gravestone, and then I walk off left. This allows me to know pretty much exactly where I am, and I can long walk left into a full for the next screen. I do ceiling checks to find my position, walk right, and then full. This next screen is one of my favourite screens in the run. It used to be a nightmare in Blindfolded as it had a 2-frame jump that was punishing and seemingly unavoidable, but I found out it can be a 3-framer if you stand in just the right spot. First I walk right against this block, then a tiny bonk jump into it to slide me into place. A full right followed by a tap jump left, and the easy part's done. Now I have to do some very specific ceiling checks. I need to be positioned so that I'm just barely bonking my head, using the bonk sound to guide me. Once there, I full left, and I should be in the 3-frame position for the next jump, assuming I did it correctly. The intended method for this next screen isn't really viable for Blindfolded. There's no way to know where you are once you're on this middle platform. But after some strat finding, I found another way. If you overshoot the slippery platform intentionally, you land in this crevice, and from here you can bonk down to this lower platform. Then it's just ceiling checks, a long walk right, and a full left. From up here, long walk left to the edge, there's no real risk of walking too far. An easy left jump, and full right to transition. This screen has a pretty cool showcase of how much normalized setups can give in Blindfolded. In this case, it's just a big chain of full jumps. There's pretty much no way to even fail, unless you press a wrong button or something. And it's a good thing too, because this next screen right after is probably the hardest in the entire run up to this point. From here I have a really hard short jump. I actually failed it a few minutes earlier in the run. What makes it hard to do in Blindfolded is not only the small frame window, but because of the transition to the screen, you're never in exactly the same place every time. This left jump after is much easier. I do a right tap before this next hard jump to get a bigger window. You can technically make this one with a bunch of frames, but you have to react to bonking and hold right instantly, and since I can't see, I just have to try to land it short. Another setup here to maximize my frame window for this big left, and then full right to the final screen of the area. I walk left until I hear the landing sound on the lower platform, and then full right. I could just YOLO jump left here straight away, but I missed it in a run and the fall is quite bad, so ever since then I started doing this setup to get a slightly more lenient jump. And that's the end of Bugstalk. House of 9 Lives is next, commonly referred to as the cats area. This is where I turn my monitor off, so even if I was using a fake blindfold or something, it wouldn't help very much. I do it this far in the run just so that I'm not turning it on and off all the time during attempts. And I like to have it on to start with to show that my inputs are actually being done on the screen, and it's not just a video playing. It doesn't really matter what I do, there will always be people who think everything is fake. For the first screen of cats, I do a really scuffed strat. Lehvel has a much better one that only consists of full jumps, but I never bothered learning it. I do a short walk into a full right to land next to this cat. I walk behind the cat, without petting it because the devs didn't add that as an option, and then full right. Then it's just getting onto the same platform that Lehvel did, but in a much less clean fashion. Then 2 full jumps. By the way, I'm pretty much safe once I'm at this area, so I'm not going to be covering the falls, as they just send me back to the first screen. In fact, the only way you really can fall from here in Blindfolded is if you somehow manage to walk off the left side of this screen, which is pretty much impossible. Or if you fall out of the screen below, but the ambience is different down there, because you can't hear the cats purring anymore, so it's very easy to know that you're not supposed to walk right. Screen 2 of cats has an easy setup with a couple full jumps to get to the very edge of this platform, making the jump to the floating lantern very easy. From here the speedrun takes a left and goes a different route, but there's a much easier method. Full right, walk into the wall, full left, full right again, and full left. From this lantern I have to barely tap right twice, do a full left, and then there's a 2-frame jump right, which is always hard, but again there's no punishment from falling in this area. Onto screen 4. This is a short, easy left jump, and regardless of where I land, I full right. If I get the shortest frame, I'll bonk, but I can full right again. Then just full left to screen 5. Screen 5 is a bit of a weird one. I just need to get to this lower lantern by doing a full right from the edge and then walking off. I can land up here directly, or slip off the slope straight onto the lower one. But there's this one annoying spot where it doesn't quite work, so I made a setup to get it every time. I do 3 full lefts from against the wall, and then a tap jump right. Either 2 or 3 frames works perfectly, and I pretty much always get one of the 2 if I just tap the button. And if I get any of the other frames, I would hear it, and I could just do it again. I always know which lantern I've landed on, because sliding down into the lower one has a different sound play. In my run, I landed on the upper one, so I walk off left, and then do a full left. Walk into the wall in 2 full rights, followed by a full left to get to the second to last screen. This screen's a lot easier than you'd probably think. The speedrun makes it look like it would be hard, but it's not too bad. I tap right twice on this first lantern to get an extra frame of leeway, and then I do ceiling checks. I need to be just barely hitting my head on the lantern above, and then I can full left. And then the next one is a big jump right to bonk down to the platform. It's much easier than just jumping straight to it. After doing a full here to set up this jump, I have to listen to my airtime. If I get the earliest of the 3 possible landings, I'll need to walk right before jumping to avoid bonking my head. I can jump straight away if I get either of the other 2, like I did here. And that's cats over with. All these jumps I'm doing here are just falls, it's just a weird transition screen to the next area. If you've gotten this far into the video and are enjoying it so far, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like, it helps a lot. On its surface, Phantom Tower looks like a hard and unforgiving area, but it has a gimmick that removes a lot of that difficulty if you're perceptive enough to find it. Almost every screen has one of these disappearing Tetris blocks. These act as regular platforms and can be full jump to for easier traversal, and of course I use them in Blindfolded. The first jump of this area is a tough one. If I overshoot it, I fall back to this exact position in cats, and I can recover by doing a full left and then a full right. Should I undershoot it, I'll fall back to this bottom floating lantern, and I can also try to recover. But if I make it, the next one is a lot easier. Screen 2 has the first example of these Tetris blocks, an easy full right. Full left straight away, and a short walk into a full left to bunk down. From here I have a 3-frame window for this right jump, but missing it's not a huge deal. A full right transition sets me up on the edge of the first platform of screen 3, and then another easy Tetris jump. A tap jump right and a full, walk into the wall and a left jump. This screen is easy. Screen 4 has a pretty cool strat. A full left to transition, followed by tapping right. A full right splats me down intentionally to the previous screen, but in a very specific spot. I can full left, and then full right from here to get to the next Tetris block without any risk. Any falls from here onwards in this area will almost always send me to one of a few places. There's the right side fall which sends me back to just above cats. This one on this kind of L-shaped edge platform. And this one, which I call sunglasses because, I don't know, it just kind of was the first thing I thought of when I was writing this. It's easy to know if I fall into the L platform or sunglasses because I can just tap left a few times and full. One bunks and one doesn't. For this next screen, I short hop right to get close to the edge for the next Tetris fall, then tap jump left. If I don't jump far enough, I can just walk a little first. If I jump too far, I fall back to the previous platform, so I can just try again. There's one fall I didn't mention earlier, which is what happens if you fall down the left side of the map, like by overshooting this next jump. You fall all the way down to the side of the cats area, and while you can recover by doing 2 3-frame recovery jumps back to back, it's extremely hard, so probably best to just never fall on the left side. After landing and transitioning, we come to the hardest screen of this area. It's all centered around this tight left jump. If I overshoot it, it's over. The run is dead, my PC explodes, it's the end of time. Undershooting it is salvageable but still pretty bad. I full right to the Tetris, then tap jump left, till I hear the landing on the lower platform. This is where it gets complicated. So basically, depending on where you are on this platform, this hard jump left can vary greatly in difficulty. From some positions it's a 2-frame jump, and from some it can be as high as 4, so this setup is all to ensure it's as lenient as possible. From this position I want to do either a 25 or 24 frame jump. 23 is safe, but I pretty much never get it as it's too risky to jump that low, and 22 or lower will send me back down. If I overshoot, as long as I don't overdo it by miles, it's fine, as I just fall to this previous platform. I'd rather overshoot it by a frame or two a bunch, rather than risk undershooting it. After I get the 25 or 24 frame landing, I have to do a very specific tap hop right. In this run, I got the 25, which meant I have to do either a 2 or 3 frame hop right. This will give me the ideal 4 frames to land the next jump. The next big right jump is slightly different depending on where you land, but missing it isn't a huge deal. You just land back here and can do the hard left jump again, usually with a tighter window though. Once I make it over, it's a full left to the full spike jump screen. This jump isn't too hard as the positioning is always the same, but of course missing it is fatal. Full right and I walk against the stair, bonk it and then short hop. Transition jump to the right and then I walk into the wall for the next setup. 2 falls followed by walking against the wall and another full. From here I can do 4 full lefts in a row to position myself close to the edge. This whole screen is free thanks to this setup. Just a tap left before the next easy left jump and then Phantom Tower is over. Halted Ruin is by far and away the hardest area to complete blindfolded. Even just doing it with save states in practice is difficult, let alone in a full run. Fellow blindfolded Jump King and Hitman Runner Blink was the first to attempt to route it, and he wrote up this whole Google Doc explaining the viable strategies. It's a bit outdated compared to current strats, but it shows how much more thought had to go into this area compared to the others to have it be viable. The first screen is actually one of the hardest input-wise, but there's very little risk of falling, so it's more tedious than hard. In my run, I enter here with just under 18 minutes on the timer, but I don't get past this first screen until almost 20. That's a long time for a screen with only 3 jumps. First off, I get into the water and walk left. A full left positions me perfectly at the edge for the first jump. I have to listen very carefully to my landing. There's 4 positions I can land in, and I want to hear if I'm over to the left or right on the platform, based on the airtime. Depending on the landing I get, I can full right to reposition, and tap right to be in a good spot for the next jump. This next jump is the hardest mandatory jump in all of vanilla jumping. Mandatory in the sense that there's no route that avoids it. It's the only forced 2-frame jump in the vanilla game. Even the chimney in map 1 is a 3-framer from a specific position. Jumping runs at 58.82 frames per second, or 17 milliseconds per frame. So you have 34 milliseconds to release jump. Doing it blindfolded is obviously much harder, but it's not a punishing jump. After landing it, I have to hear if I get the short or far landing. There's a scenario where you can have this happen and you fall all the way back to the start of Phantom Tower, but it's easy to avoid by just tapping right first. Full left to screen 2, and then full right into the water. A full right from here will always put me in the same spot, and I do a short left walk to set up this medium right jump. A ceiling check on landing to know roughly where I've landed, and then a medium right, which is also pretty easy. And then I walk into the wall before doing the next screen transition. This next screen is the first point where there's a very real chance of me falling all the way back to Phantom Tower. Any fall into this chute will send me all the way back. The screen starts off with the tap hop right to make the jump to the middle more lenient, then from the middle platform I do ceiling checks until I get over to the left. I need to be just barely not bonking. This would be easier with the snake ring, but because of a rule on speedrun.com, the snake ring can't be used past the bug area, and I'm playing by the same rules in Blindfolded. After getting to the perfect spot, I have to do either a 2 or 4 frame hop right. Any other frame will give me a very poor setup for this left jump. If I hop 2 or 4 frames, you'll see here that I can both snap the platform, but also land right on the far edge, giving me 5 possible landing frames. Any other position would be worse. I know what a 2-frame hop sounds like, and I got it first try here. On the left platform, I ceiling check again to find my position before jumping. And then same again from this top platform. It's very fortunate that these ceilings exist, or this screen would be a nightmare. Screen 4 usually starts with a 2-frame jump, but you can make it a 3-framer by walking right, doing a full right, then full left. This makes the jump way easier. Upon landing this full, I do a short walk left, then a full right. From here, should I overshoot the left jump like I do, there's no real punishment. It's also not a big deal if I undershoot it, as the recovery is very easy. Screen 6 is quite a bit harder. I tap right before jumping here to get an extra landing frame, and then I do the ceiling checks again. After getting in roughly the right spot, I do a left walk into a full right, which just barely lands me on the next platform. I only learned about this strat just before doing this run, so thanks to Lehvel again for showing it me. Since I know I'm on the far left of this tiny platform, I know exactly how far to jump to the wall, and then the rest of the screen is just full jumps with no risk at all. A full jump into the waterfall source, walk all the way left, a full right, a full left, and another full left. The right jump here is pretty easy, and it's only punishing if you overshoot it. Undershooting it is fine. If you do overshoot it, you fall a couple screens. Most falls in this area tend to land you in the same place, which is this platform, but sometimes this lower one, which is easy to identify because of the text sound effect in the background. The final screen of Halted is the hardest screen of the entire map, in Blindfolded. I've easily spent more time here than any other. The screen's difficulty mostly boils down to getting from this central platform to this upper platform where you transition to the final area. In a normal playthrough, you would take the intended route like this, but the speedrun does a bonk here instead. Getting to this platform is relatively easy. This first left jump isn't too hard, and the punishment is pretty negligent whether you undershoot it or overshoot it. Once I'm here, I do ceiling checks using the convenient platform above me to get into the same position every time. I want to be just barely not bonking on the right side. If I happen to undershoot this next jump, I just land safely on this lower block and can try again. Now that I'm on the platform, however, there's a bit of a problem. To do the bonk method, you have to be on the far left edge. If you're not far enough, it won't work. But once you're here, you can't really ceiling check, as regardless of where you stand, you're always hitting your head. This makes knowing your exact position seemingly impossible. Lehvel noticed that when you do ceiling checks here, there is a slight difference in sound, depending on where you stand, because the ceilings aren't the same height across the platform. This can be used to somewhat determine your position, and it's useful, but I found it to be less consistent. The way I found worked the most consistently for me was to not even bother doing the bonk at all, and instead go the normal way. To go this way, I still had to get myself to the edge on this platform to make this right jump without hitting my head, but it's way less strict. When I do the jump from this left platform, I'm listening carefully to my airtime. If I feel like I landed relatively early, I do a tap hop right. This will put me in a good position straight away. and if I feel I landed too far into the platform, I can just do a tiny walk right and then jump. What's also great about this method is even if I jump off the platform completely by overshooting the hop, I don't actually fall. In fact, once you're up here, it's pretty easy to stay up here, at least until you get to the next area. From this far right platform, I can use the one above me to do ceiling checks again to get myself into the optimal spot. I tap left until I'm just barely bonking my head, and then do another tap. This gives me 3 landing frames for this next jump, frames 23 to 25 to be specific. If I undershoot, it's not a big deal, I can easily recover, but overshooting is a much bigger punishment, so I'm always erring on the side of doing too little. By listening to my airtime, I can somewhat hear the difference between these landings, but it's very easy to mistake 23 with 24 and 24 with 25. If I'm very confident that I got the earliest frame, I can actually buffer 2 full right jumps to finish the area. But that's extremely risky, and I don't know if I'd actually go for it in a run unless I was sure. Usually I just have to have a feel for which landing I was likely to have gotten, and then just YOLO this next short hop, as there's no useful ceiling checks to find my position. In my run, I did a reposition because I felt I had to. It really is just a feel thing. This screen is extremely hard to do without looking, but if you can get through it, then you're onto the final area. This was my first time ever making it to the final area blind, and I was extremely nervous. I mean, just look at my face. For those of you that have beaten this map before, or anyone that has watched it, you might be wondering how in the world this area is even approachable in Blindfolded. For anyone unaware, the Terror of Antumbra introduces a new gimmick, the sand. Your character sinks quite easily into these platforms as soon as you land in them, and as you could imagine, this heavily nerfs almost every technique used up to this point before Blindfolded. However, despite this, Antumbra is still quite a bit easier than Halted Ruin.
I'm unbeatable. I can't be beat. It's impossible.
The first screen is simple enough, you just jump medium right and hug the wall. Full left, and like with regular platforms, you can buffer jumps upon entering the sand. I buffer 3 full left jumps to get a consistent position. 2 full rights from here will just barely land me at the start of screen 2. And from here I walk off left into the sand, and then without moving left or right, I do a neutral jump, and then buffer a full left into a full right. This puts me back on the same platform, but in a much better position for the next jump. From here I get this perfect snap frame into the sand, making it easier to get in. However, overshooting by 1 frame is pretty devastating. Undershooting is pretty easy to recover from as long as you don't choke. After landing the jump, I do ceiling checks and spam left taps to get over to the left side. I then let myself sink very briefly before doing a full right. If I did it correctly, I should always be on the right side of this platform, and I can do a minimum hop left to get onto the left edge. This big left has to be landed successfully, and I again set myself slightly further left in the sand before doing a full right. The reason for this weird full right that just puts me back in the same sand platform is because in Blindfolded, sand jumps are a lot easier to time if you do them upon entering the sand, rather than while you're already in it. Like that jump you just saw. Full right, and then time the short hop upon hearing the sand entry sound effect. By the time I hear it, I've already sunk quite low, so I'm pre-buffering the jump input before I actually enter. This next jump is far from easy, and I actually miss it here, but thankfully overshooting it is safe. Speaking of getting saved, this happened right after, but I knew what had happened and so I was able to recover. After landing it, I knew my landing was quite far, so I nudged myself over to the right. Like with the jump from earlier, the strat here is to sink, then full jump. And again I'm on the far edge of the platform, so I can do a tiny hop to get to the correct side. This can and often does go wrong. A full right skips the middle floating sand, but I actually want to be in it, so I do ceiling checks to get myself over to the left side of the sand that I'm currently in. Then a full left, and a slight sink into a full right completes the screen. As awkward and complicated as these setups are, they're actually pretty consistent. This screen coming up is easily the hardest in Antumbra. The top speedruns do a sand boost to skip half of the platforms, but that's out of the question in Blindfolded. It starts out easy enough though. I just full left, bonk my head, medium left, and full right into this higher sand pit. Lehvel, the only other victor of this map in Blindfolded, does this in a way that only consists of full jumps and is technically safer, but I practically never fail it the way that I do it, so I never bothered to learn his way. Once I'm in this pit, I spam right hops, which pushes me closer to the wall. Once I hear myself bonk into it, I do a neutral with a buffered full left. Some right hops into the sand, and then full left. This is the hard part. I have to get over to the left, bonk into the wall without falling out of the sand, and then rub against it to ensure that I'm actually touching it. Then a full neutral, and I have to listen for the sand entry, and time my full right pretty much perfectly to land just barely into this floating middle sand block. If I mistime it, I can fly over the sand, or fall out of it completely. Overshooting it can be recovered, but falling through it is much more dangerous as it's very hard to react in time. From the middle sand, I can full neutral into a full right, and then medium hop up the slope to finish the screen. The next screen is thankfully much easier. Full left and a neutral jump. If I hear a bonk, I know my position. If I don't hear it, I just tap right in the sand until I do. Then I position myself so that I'm just barely bonking my head using ceiling checks, and full left. An easy medium jump into this middle sand, and then a full right. I'm extremely nervous at this point, so I'm taking a lot of care in my setups. Ceiling checks again here. I want to be just barely bonking, and then I do a short walk left into a full left jump. This lands me on the right edge of this sand block, making the next jump a little easier, but it's still very missable, like all sand entry jumps are. This was the lightest possible landing frame, meaning if I held the jump button for just a few milliseconds more, I would have overshot it and fell back to about halfway down the Halted Ruin. 2 full jumps here, and now I do a weird bonk tap jump left, which sets me up in the same spot every time. Undershooting this next jump is safe, but overshooting it is devastating, so I don't mind missing it a few times to avoid that. Once I'm in this sand, I have to get over to the right edge. I do this by full jumping and listening for the head bonk sound. If I don't hear it, I move over to the right until I do, and then when I do hear it, I do a sync full left jump. And then full right. This is the famous babe jump screen, the last of the 61 that have to be memorized for this challenge, and there's really only 1 jump left. From against the wall, I do 3 full jumps to set myself in the sand correctly. I let myself sink half a second and then full left. This is easy to do and sets me perfectly on the far edge of the babe platform. Unlike the babe jumps from the previous maps, this one has to be done from the sand, which makes it considerably harder, especially when you can't see. I do full jumps to set myself, and I try to get a feeling for the rhythm since I'd practiced this jump a lot. Then I went for it, and just hoped it landed. And that's how Jump King's hardest map was beaten blindfolded. There's no music since I had it turned off for the run. I turned my monitor back on here to show the game was still running the whole time. I don't react too much, but I was very happy to have completed this challenge. Although the final run itself was only 37 minutes, the total time spent preparing for the run with all the routing and practice was probably over 100 hours. Was it worth it? Maybe not, but when I saw it was possible I felt I had to do it. And if people enjoyed this video, which I really hope they do, then it will definitely have been. I don't normally make stuff like this since I'm not all that great at editing, but I hope it came out okay. Like the video if you enjoyed it since that helps a lot, and subscribe if you really liked it. Before I close out the video, some of you might be wondering, with Main Babe and Ghost of the Babe both being blindfolded, what about the other main Jump King map, New Babe Plus? Well, it has been looked at. I routed the map myself up to Lost Frontier, and it's definitely doable up to that point. The problem is, not only is Lost Frontier the most technically difficult area in all of the vanilla game, it's also very bad for blindfolded, since the area is so open with hardly any ceilings to find your position accurately. Combined with the crazy long falls and the difficulty of the later areas, which are also way harder than anything in Ghost of the Babe, I think New Babe Plus being done blindfolded is mostly out of the question, at least right now. So the blindfolded trilogy might never be a thing. But regardless, I really enjoyed running this game blind, and I hope you've enjoyed learning about it. Thank you again to everyone who helped me out with making this, especially Lehvel. This category might have never even been a thing without him. And thank you to the developers for making such a good game. And goodbye for now.